Hi everyone, it's Marian. Spring is officially here, so that means it's time to get our houseplants and ourselves ready for the growing season. Thank you so much for joining me today, and spring is probably the favorite season of many gardeners and houseplant parents because this is the time where our houseplants get out of dormancy and into the growing season. But it's actually a misconception that the start of spring is also the start of the growing season because the growing season usually happens after the last frost date, depending on where you are. Like for me, our last frost date is usually during the end of April, maybe first week of May. And for others, it could be earlier than that or later than that, again, depending on where you are located. So even though spring has already sprung, you don't have to worry that you and your plants are not ready yet for the growing season because you still got time. And in this video, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to do to properly transition your houseplants and get ready for the growing season by going through my spring plant care checklist that can be found in my Plantiful planner. But if you didn't get your planner, that's okay. It's already like March, almost April. You can head over to my website, plantifulshop.com, and scroll down under free downloads. You will find a copy of the spring plant care checklist for free along with other freebies. So go ahead and go check out my website. The link will be down in the description. But before we start, if you're new to my channel, hi, my name is Marian. Welcome to my Wasteless Life, where I take you along my houseplant journey and share with you some of my tips and tricks along the way, as well as lifestyle content that is focused on sustainability, productivity, and wellness, and some of my personal and travel vlogs here and there. So if that type of content interests you, please make sure to subscribe to my channel before the end of this video. And also don't forget to like this video and comment down below. I'd be happy to hear from you. So as we go through my spring plant care checklist, just note that you don't have to do everything on the checklist right away. You don't have to complete them all in one day or even during the first week of the spring season. You have plenty of time to do everything on the checklist before the growing season officially starts in your area. And actually, for some of the items on this checklist, you do have to wait until the growing season officially starts before you actually start doing them. So don't worry, you have plenty of time, and your houseplants and yourself will be ready by the time growing season officially starts. So first thing that you need to do is to go check and take inventory of your plant care supplies that you already have and see what you actually need to stock up on. So before you head up to the garden center or go online to order a bunch of stuff that you think you might need, go check the supplies that you already have left over from the past growing season or even the stuff that you've been using over the winter, and see which ones that you need to buy right now and which ones that could wait a little bit later, so that you don't have to spend a lot of money on a bunch of plant supplies that you might end up not using anyways. So for me, I kind of like cleaned my storage area where my planters are and some of my plant supplies, and also the plant supplies that I currently often use, see which ones I'm running low on. And I know personally I need a new moisture meter because I think the moisture meter I currently have no longer works because it's not reading correctly. Even after I water my houseplants, it's still reading on the dry side. So I went ahead and got a new moisture meter. It's probably not going to come by the time I edit and put up this video, but I will show it in an upcoming video. And I also know that I'm going to need some liquid fertilizer because I'm already out. But when I was downstairs looking at the supplies that I have outside, I saw that I still have some leftover fish emulsion fertilizer. So I think I'm going to use that as I transition my houseplants into the growing season, and I can wait a little bit later before I buy a fertilizer that I normally use for my houseplants. So that way you're also not spending a lot of money right away, and you could budget accordingly, and you're not spending your money on plant supplies that you're not going to end up using. But if you're confused or don't really know what you actually need to be able to take care of your plants as we transition into the growing season, I did create a video on how to build your basic plant care kit, so you can go check it out. I'll link it up here and also down in the description, and also in my website, plantifulshop.com. You can head again under free downloads. There's also a plant care kit list over there to see the items that you might want to have in your own plant care kit. And next on the checklist is to see which houseplants need repotting. So make a list of the plants that need repotting, so that way you also know how much soil and supplies you need to do all the repotting that you need to do. And for your houseplants that don't need repotting, it's prudent to at least change the topsoil of those houseplants. So again, that is a good thing to know, so you know how much soil and supplies you need to do both the changing of the topsoil and repotting of your houseplants. And next on the checklist is to flush plants that don't need repotting. And I have an entire video on how to flush your houseplants and why you should flush your houseplants. And this is just for the plants that you are not repotting, because these are the plants that are not getting fresh soil. The most that they're getting is the fresh topsoil that I mentioned earlier. But flushing your houseplants is an important step to take before you start fertilizing your houseplants again, because this removes the buildup in the soil and also allows your plants to properly absorb those nutrients once you start fertilizing them again. So when you're watering your plants next time, do not bottom water it, or if you're already a top waterer, but make sure you are top watering it thoroughly, not just like putting a little bit of water like that and then letting it drain and also sit in a tray. What you need to do is to grab your plant, hold it over a sink. Just make sure you have proper drainage on your sink to catch any soil spillage. Is to pour water on top very slowly so that no soil overflows, and then let it drain out. So the important thing is you're letting the water completely drain out, and you're not letting it sit in water that has already gone through the soil. And you do that about 3 times. And just make sure everything is completely drained before you put it back where you normally put your plants. And then give them a lot of light, and maybe even put them on a heat mat if you have one, so that they are not oversaturated for too long, thus preventing root rot. So next on the checklist is to prune your plants. This is something that you've probably been doing anyways throughout the winter season, but if you haven't, that's okay. The time to start it is now. So if your plants are pushing out runners, very leggy growth, or small growth, it's time to cut those back so that the next time it grows, it would encourage bigger and better growth. And which leads to the next item on the checklist, if you want to, is to propagate your houseplants. So once you prune your houseplants, you can use those cuttings to propagate your houseplants. And usually propagation, you don't really have to wait until the start of the growing season, because a lot of propagating usually happens indoors, or at least starts indoors first. But since the weather is starting to get warmer and you're getting more light, it is a lot more favorable to start propagating now compared to the winter season. Or if you have been propagating over the winter season, maybe this is the time to start transplanting your propagations and transition them into the growing season. If you are inclined to do so, this is the time to start propagating your houseplants. Or if you want to grow an outdoor garden, this is also the time to start thinking of seeding some of the plants that you want to grow in your outdoor garden. Next on the checklist is to clean the foliage of your plants, especially for your houseplants that have large foliage that you don't really water frequently. This is a good time to make sure that you are cleaning the foliage of your houseplants during their watering day or even in between watering days. And this is also a good way to check off another item on the spring plant care list, is when you are cleaning the foliage of your houseplants. You can do that when you are also trying to flush the houseplants. And another thing that you can do while you are cleaning the foliage of your houseplants and trying to flush your houseplants is to clean your planters. So especially if you have cash pots or decorative pots, take the time to clean them. If you're using a terracotta pot, the buildup would be very visible on the side of the planters. Is usually like the white stuff on the terracotta pot, so you can take the time to wipe that off or brush that off. It does come off very easily, but you just need to take the time to actually do it. Next item on the checklist, which is a big one, is to prepare for pest infestation. For me personally, my largest pest infestation, especially with fungus gnats, happened during late winter to early spring. So this is the time that I really pay attention to my houseplants when it comes to pest infestation. And this is also a good time to check your pest management supplies and add it to the stuff that you need for this growing season that you might need to stock up on. So see what items that you have for pest management or pest treatment, and see if you need to stock up of any of the items. It's a good time to do that as well. And this is also a good time to start taking preventive measures, not just waiting for the houseplant infestation, especially when it comes to fungus gnats. I have started to put out sticky straps around my houseplants, and that really helps in trying to contain the fungus gnat infestation, at least with the parent or the adult fungus gnats. And also changing the topsoil of your houseplants also helps with lessening the chances of having a huge fungus gnat infestation, because the larva or the eggs of the fungus gnats is laid on top of the soil of the houseplants. So even though during the winter time you weren't getting any fungus gnats with the same type of soil on your houseplants, come spring season or growing season, you will see the fungus gnats start to come out of the soil because the weather is getting warmer. And the next one is to start watering your plants frequently. And this one, you kind of have to be very careful because you don't want to overwater your plants. And usually the weather transitioning from winter to spring is very erratic. Like for us, just this week alone, we went from having snow a couple of days to 70 degrees the next day. So the weather is still very erratic during the transition. So just making sure that you are watering your plants accordingly. And this is when a moisture meter really helps. That's why I repurchased a moisture meter once I realized mine is broken. A moisture meter is a great tool even if you are an experienced plant parent, not just for beginners, to help you determine if your houseplants need watering or not. And it's also good to have a houseplant tracker if you're not a person that's typically tracking your watering schedule. At least for during this period, try to track when you are watering your houseplant. I do have a houseplant tracker in my Plantiful planner. That's what I use. Before that, I use apps to help me track my watering schedule, or you could even just make a spreadsheet or just make notes on your phone on when you last watered your houseplants, just so you're aware how frequent or when was the last time you watered your houseplants, so you don't risk overwatering them. So we're almost in the final stretch, and the next one is to start fertilizing your houseplants again. So just because spring season has started, it doesn't mean that you should give your houseplants full doses of fertilizers right away. You have to transition your houseplants and to start receiving fertilizer again, or else it might shock them. And giving your houseplants the full dose of fertilizers right away might actually be detrimental for your houseplants. So make sure you ease onto it, because as I mentioned earlier, there are things that you actually need to do before you start fertilizing your houseplants again. It's also a good idea to make sure to build up to the full dose of fertilizer that you usually give to your houseplants, then just going from not fertilizing them to fully fertilizing them right away. I would start with a quarter of what I normally add to my water, and then a half until I reach the full dose that I usually give my houseplants. And by that time, it's well into the growing season, so my houseplants would be okay receiving a full amount of the fertilizer that I normally give them over the growing season. And second to the last on the checklist is to transition houseplants back to outdoors. So if you're someone who has space or ability to bring houseplants outdoors during the growing season, that is great. Your plants would love you for it. I would wait until the temperature is consistently 65 degrees and above before I even attempt bringing them outside. And when you start bringing them outside, I would just do it for a few hours. Like for me, if I start taking out my plants outside, I would take it out maybe around 10 a.m. when I know it is warm or the highest temperature of the day, and then take them back in at around 4 or 5, a couple hours before sunset. So this is to make sure that the plants are getting adjusted not just to the warmer temps, but also to the brighter light and also the elements on the outside, which they don't experience when they were indoors. And I make sure to bring them back in every single night, because at springtime, the temperatures still drop way below 55 degrees, and you don't really want your houseplants to be freezing outside during the night, even though they're getting ample light and warm temperature during the day. And I would continue to do that until you get consistent temperature that's above 65 degrees at night, so that you make sure that your houseplants survive being outside 24/7. And when I start to bring them outside too, I'll make sure that they are in a shaded area and not where they get direct sun, because that can be detrimental for your houseplants as well. Even though they might be getting direct light while they're inside, it is still very much different when they're getting direct light outside. So make sure when you're bringing your houseplants outside, they're still in a shaded area. And last one on the list, so if you're already transitioning your plants outside and you're getting more light indoors, then it's time to uninstall those grow lights. So for me, the only grow lights that I'm keeping is in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet because there's really no point in uninstalling it. And I still do find myself using the grow lights in the IKEA greenhouse cabinet throughout the year, even during summertime. But for any growing lights that I have hanging, like I have one hanging on this window for dark gloomy days, I do turn that on. I'm probably going to take that down as soon as we're getting consistent sunny weather during the spring season. But yeah, so those are everything on my spring plant care checklist. I hope you find that helpful. If I missed anything, please let me know down in the comments, or if you have any questions on anything that I mentioned here, let me know also down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're new here, please do subscribe. I come up with videos every week. And if you haven't yet, check out these videos up here. Until my next one. But until then, I see you. I appreciate you. Take care of yourself and each other, and have a plentiful day. Bye.